It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Beverley Price. We're here in Jerusalem. In Beverley, you're studying at Haifa University. You're doing your master's.
Yeah.
And it is such a pleasure to have you here in Jerusalem. And you have a most amazing journey. And the topic that you're doing, so if you could just tell us a little about where I know you were born in Joburg, but a little bit how you came to your master's on such an amazing topic in Haifa University.
Thanks, Les. Let's see. I started. I think I'll just give you the two salient points, and then we can talk more about my life, if you like, and I can talk a bit more. For the years that I was back living in South Africa, which was actually, I'll explain that later, from around 1995, just post-apartheid until about 3.5 months ago, I got involved had an interest in the pre-colonial gold of Southern Africa, at a place called Mapungubwe, and I did a lot of work on this, and it was in my interest to have the original goldsmiths vindicated, that they should be given credit for the fact that indigenous black goldsmiths had the wherewithal, the knowledge, indigenous knowledge, to mine, to refine, to manufacture using fine gold. Well, it turns out it's fine gold, but so the artifacts were found actually in 1933 by Pretoria University, the archaeological department, and they were kept hidden in Pretoria University. People knew that they existed, and what it included was a little fine gold, meaning pure gold, rhinoceros shell. A little tiny shell fits in your hand. Actually, I've got a picture of it over there. And gold beads, and also glass beads. So there were a whole lot of things related to jewelry, but what they had there was it was like a hierarchical society, but they imported and exported. They exported the gold and imported glass. It was very sophisticated, and this information was kept hidden because it conflicted really with the apartheid government. So with the change of government in 1994-95, you started to see these pictures of this little rhinoceros. I remember seeing outside our Tambo airport a billboard with a picture of this rhinoceros, and then in fact it was a curator from the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto that actually commissioned something from me to make a work, and he told me about the Mapungubwe rhinoceros, and then from there I was starting it was called an advanced diploma in fine art at Wits, the year 2000, and I just ran with this. It was really an amazing subject. I mean, this just how my thinking was around jewelry and gold and adornment, or large adornment objects, the beaded objects in South Africa. Was just a lot that was related to repairing something that had been missed or avoided by the white government or just the policies of the country during apartheid. Because so I did all this work, a lot of research, and to really in the end vindicate the indigenous jewelers, goldsmiths of South Africa. They lived in about 900 to 1300 after the Christian era, in the northeast of the country of South Africa, Mapungubwe, I made like very large jewelry, and it was interesting. Anglo Gold Ashanti commissioned a large gold work, or 0.5 kilo of gold, using the alloys, supposed alloys. I worked with an archaeological metallurgist who gave me all his information around the actual contents of it wasn't an alloy, it was actually fine gold, but the gold was located in southern Africa. There had been some stories that it had come from the north and from Egypt, and anyway, tachlis, the bottom line is that black people had this they had this knowledge, and so I finished this work. It was a long period of involvement with it, and people sort of knew me for my rhinos. I would make sculptures around rhinos, and got a lot of commissions to make other rhinos, rhinoceroses, and the Mapugubi rhinoceros. This is the little, it's a little sculpture, beautiful. I'm wondering if we can stop this for a second, because
it is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Beverley Price. We're here in Jerusalem, and Beverley, you're originally from Joburg, and you've come to Israel, and you're at Haifa University doing a proposal for a thesis on Nazi gold in the Shoah, in the Holocaust. Incredible. What a subject, what a topic, what was so important.
Yeah.
If you could tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to this amazing decision to do this incredible and important work.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Les. And thanks for your passion and enthusiasm. And I'm born in Joburg. My parents, my father was, my dad was Lithuanian, my mom Polish, and I'm a first generation South African, clearly. I grew up during apartheid, and went to King David School, and it was part of the beautiful South African Jewish community. And then, I went to university. I started off doing a year of medicine. That was a little frustrating. I had always wanted to work with my hands, actually, and so it was the thing. I got into medicine, so I did it for a year, and then I switched to speech therapy, and I became a speech therapist. I worked for a couple of years in speech therapy, and I immigrated to Israel, made Aliyah in 1983, and actually lived in various places, but mostly in Yerushalayim. And I worked just down the road from here. I can see the old hospital. I worked at Sharet Tzedek Hospital as a speech therapist. And then I slowly started to move towards the arts, actually. So I worked for a period, actually, for the IUA of South Africa, and Fakim, and then the IUA, the South African IUA, was starting a project for learning goldsmithing. In industrial goldsmithing, not to work as a jeweler. And I just thought this might be interesting. I first actually worked for a little while as a carpenter. I worked for a company called Harari Harps. They make harps, and I made harps, and I learned to work with wood, and then had no training really with my hands. They were willing to take us at that level. And then I decided that I wanted to go and study jewelry. So this was my opportunity really to move out of the sort of paramedical field and into the arts. And so I did a beginning course in an industrial course here in Israel. And one of my teachers, a Scottish guy, suggested that I could go to London really to get better skills. So I went to London. I worked in London initially as a speech therapist to fund myself and for Jewish care, and I studied jewelry in London. I did like a kind of an apprenticeship in Hatton Garden, and then I came back to Israel, 93 to 95, and was part of a studio down in Hillel Street. We were a couple of jewelers just off the Midrechov. I went back to South Africa in 1995 after Mandela was released. I thought just for a couple of years maybe, but it turned out to be a long time. So I was back in South Africa, living in South Africa about 27 years. So in that time I was involved with my mom and dad and whatever. So, but I also then actually I invented a method of making jewelry. I had learned in London to be an enameler, So my earrings are enamel. Enamel is glass on metal. If you've heard of Fabergé, or Fabergé is enamel, so that's what I learned. It's like you put the silver or gold jewelry in a kiln, and you get
the famous Fabergé eggs.
Yeah, like the Fabergé eggs. Yeah. So that's my specialty. And then coming back to South Africa, so the political climate was just very strong, of course, and I just invented this technique. I actually was living for a while in rural South Africa. I lived in Ikopo actually for a little while, and I was exposed to Zulu people, and just was very inspired by living in this environment as a South African. And yeah, here's one of the early necklaces that I made, a little surf marmite Omo thing. These developed really, I trained a bunch of women. We had like a really good thing going for about 15 years. Here's a Mandela one, which just...
And was this your idea?
Yeah, it was. So
you took the picture of Mandela?
So it started with wanting to do a story around the neck. I mean, enameling is actually very, it's almost, it's very taxing, because you have to be very precise and work very clean, and you can make mistakes easily, and so I just still wanted to work with color, but I just had this idea to take a story and put it around the neck like a silent movie. So actually I haven't got one of those with me, but I have got, this is a knitting sequence, so and so what had happened at King David, we used a French conversation book, and the pictures were so sweet. They were in sequence. I used the pictures from the conversation book, the little French conversation book, and made my first necklace. It was a story around the neck, and from that it just grew. It's actually, I mean, it is still infinite. Here is one with all the pin-ups from the drum magazine. I got permission from the Bailey Archives. I worked with them for a while, and then I did more recently this with all the Keren Kayemet boxes, the JNF boxes, the blue box for Israel.
And had this ever been done before?
No. It was what you call it. It's an invention. What can I say? I just call it an invention. I mean, people invent more important things, but this I invented. But it did lead to some amazing things, and it opened many things for me. So I then made much larger works with the same technique, and then. So I went back to Wits in 2000 to do. Yeah.
You had one of the Mandela necklaces was actually worn by a very.
Okay. Let's have a look. Yeah, I've got a little booklet of some of my works. If I can find something here. When I trained this group of women, so we sold actually to the Nobel Peace Center in Oslo. And it turns out that Queen Sonja of Norway was gifted by, the store anyway, was gifted by the store with a Mandela bracelet. They had supplied the images, and we made. I had to sort of organize the photoshopping, in the right colors and whatever. Now let me find the picture. Oh dear. Sorry to take so long. Here. This is Queen Sonja of Norway's hand. It's a Getty Images picture. So this photographer took it in Cape Town. Apparently she wore it to a Mandela concert when she was visiting South Africa. Queen Sonja. Here's Queen Sonja of Norway. So there she's with her guard, and there she's with...
it's your bracelet?
Bracelet, yeah. We made this bracelet. Let's see, then another one. And here's Alfred Woodard. Alfred Woodard at the Women's March, I'm not sure, a couple of years ago, also wearing a Mandela necklace. I'm curious as to how she actually got it. Just my niece actually pointed this out to me. Oh, do you know the necklace? So also Getty Images, which is nice to have Getty Images.
It really must give you a lot of satisfaction knowing that.
Yeah, I say, why me, Lord? It just something I absolutely loved doing. Made so many people happy. People used to call these happy necklaces. And they were just so South African, And like I say, there was enough money, enough earnings for my workers to earn, and for me to earn, and for the shops to earn, and people to be happy. It was a perfect product. So, and then it led me to some like very large and quite important works. I made this is a lipoto, which is a marriage apron. This is in the Johannesburg Art Gallery. They bought it, and it was a marriage apron in Ndebele style, and I used it. It was called Marriage in the New South African Kitchen. It's my mother and her maid, marrying each other in the kitchen. That's where it all happens, right? So in the New South Africa, little pictures of Madam and Eve and all the South African products, and
this is in the Jabo.
Yeah, they bought it. Yeah,
in the museum.
Yeah, it was the first bigger piece that I made that they bought. But okay, so let me just tell you what happened then in the years of working back at Wits. So first, it was very, very exciting to go back to Wits post-apartheid and to have in my class like these amazing young black students with amazing minds. And I had the most incredible teachers. I had really the best of the best teachers. I learned with Coral Nell, with Alan Crump, Colin Richards, Penny Siopis, Walter Altman, these people, and Peter Schutz. These are really, we didn't even know how great they were in those years, but they were building the South African art discourse, moving it forward. And they encouraged me to work large, to work big, and they directed me to like the large adornment objects, for example, the beaded objects. So I took my jewelry techniques and then I applied them to these large, very, very large. So, for example, this is an example of that kind of work. But there are other bigger works. I'm not sure I'll be able to find them so quickly in here. Not important for now. Okay. So while I was studying, I think I met Natalie Knight at that time, and she was quite taken with this work, and she introduced me to this curator from the Royal Ontario Museum. And he eventually they arranged a commission. I made the work. It was to do with Mandela. It was a Mandela neck piece, referencing the neck piece that he had worn at the trial, the Rivonia trials. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah. So yeah, this is an installation with the original picture. So I had a solo exhibition at the Standard Bank in 2007. And this was an installation of the neck. This picture was taken by Ila Weinberg, who was also an apartheid photographer. And then we placed it together with the object. It's based on indigenous Xhosa neck piece with the traditional colors. So I tried to stick to the colors in the big neck piece that I made. And here's a detail. There's a detail of it. And so what it actually is a concentric chronology. So move from the neck to the edge is about Mandela's life. So what you can do then, of course, in a necklace, because you've got a 3D art object, you can do something like that. It's meant to be worn, but more for exhibition. So it starts with his early years of his life, and then all the way through his development and all the people he was involved with, and then finally to his release and the post-apartheid period. So that actually is in a private collection. It was sold on auction a couple of years ago again. Okay, so while I'm doing the studies, this same man who was interested in this piece told me about Mapungubwe. Mapungubwe is the place where South Africans, indigenous South Africans, what we used to call black people, lived and had a thriving and industrial, commercial gold organization, gold enterprise. And what they mined and refined and made jewelry and exported, through the east coast of South Africa. They were inland. They would export the gold, and import glass from the east. They traded with China. It's just phenomenal. This is the period is 900 to 1300 of the Christian era, after the Christian era, and then for 400 years. So effectively, they preceded any white colonizer on the continent of Africa by, we learned at school, Vasco da Gama, by about 500 years. These people were refining gold, and so what the apartheid government preferred to be saying was that people were of inferior intelligence, and there's kind of sort of racist thinking, and so in 1933 this little rhinoceros, the Mapungubwe rhinoceros, was found in I think it's the northeast province here. This is a picture that belongs to Anglo Gold Ashanti. That's the size of it, and what it is a shell, what they call a votive object, which was probably used, for some kind of worship purposes. But what's characteristic of it is that it had only a single horn, and its tail's pointing up. A very compact little object and perfect. I've seen the original.
And it's made out of pure gold.
Pure gold, fine gold leaf, fine gold, very thinly hand beaten foil, and what was inside was a wooden sculpture, and it was attached by a little tax, golden tax, to the sculpture inside. They hammered them in. And what happened over the years was that the wooden sculpture eroded, it disintegrated. So all that they found was this little sculpture. They've also found beads and found cast glass. So the imported glass that they were called garden roller beads. So if you're interested, anyone's interested, you can go. There's a Mapungubwe museum in Pretoria, in Tshwane, where they have all these artifacts. You can see the history of Mapungubwe. But for me, this was a big trigger because, of course, being in the jewelry field and being post-apartheid, it was very, very interesting for me that there had been indigenous gold. What I found coming back to South Africa was part of the reason, I suppose, that I landed up inventing this was I couldn't work in gold. It just forgive me, I don't mean to be too righteous, but the suffering that people was associated with mining in South Africa was very difficult for me to justify working in gold when I lived back in South Africa. And so, but when I heard of Mapungubwe, then I thought, oh my goodness, this kind of frees up a person, because they were actually working in gold before any white person arrived on the continent. So I made a lot of work on the subject of Mapungubwe.
Beverley, can I just mention,
yes,
when you said the suffering, because most of the miners actually came from areas outside the cities and leaving their families, and often they were for months on end underground in very, very dangerous conditions.
Yeah.
So that's the real suffering. And what's amazing, what you also mentioned, is that this history wasn't really taught to us. As I did history throughout my school career,
really?
And we never were told about the indigenous Africans mining gold or even trading in gold. It was unheard of.
Well, the information, as I say, 1933 it was found, and no, I didn't say. Pretoria University Archaeology Department, and these artifacts were kept in their vaults. You could go, but nothing was publicized. It was known, but not public. It was just, it conflicted with the apartheid government that there should be, that people should have this acumen. So it was to, I mean, I'm in touch with the curator of the Mapungubwe Museum, and she explained it to me, this Sayan Tali now. It was there, but you couldn't, nobody really knew. So I made various works on the subject. Jewellery I made, I made a few rhinos. This is one rhino that I made. So this actually was for Paul Harris, the banker from RMB. It was a commission. So it's an armature. It's about 1 meter long. Compact little thing.
And what is the material?
Oh, so it's actually a galvanized wire, which I've joined with like a kind of a knot. It's all cold joints, what we call cold joints. And then also characteristically, I've given it a tail pointing up and a single horn. It was a special piece to make. And then what I did was I created like a mantle and like a cover over the body. And this comprises images which I did in a similar technique to I won't get too complicated now, but as he has a huge South African art collection, and what I had to do was select from his paintings the ones that I thought would work for this particular work. So I'm not sure how many I chose here, I can't remember the figure, but a couple of hundred, and then each picture was laminated and then foiled twice in a gold and in a copper foil. The back looks like that. That's the copper foil. And then each artist I've engraved the name of each artist on the back of that particular picture, so as a reference. And then the fringe is made of kimberlite. So I did a big work for De Beers, and they gave me this kimberlite. Kimberlite is diamond-bearing ore. And I smashed it, and then I made a fringe of kimberlite, because the brief actually for this work was to take his collection into post-apartheid 21st century. And the reference for the kimberlite is about latency of new values, of new of what is precious for a person. So because the diamonds are hidden, it's about, let's see what the 21st century is going to bring as far as how we come to view South African art or his art collection, how to reframe it and give it new perspective in the context of post-apartheid South Africa. So that was that work. Okay, so I did all this work, and I had a really I thank South Africa for this. Making a speech, but I had a really good what we call jewelry art career from South Africa. I exhibited many times in Germany, actually, at some very important exhibitions.
Could you show some of the other amazing artwork
sure.
that you have here?
Okay, so actually, maybe I'll show you this Mapungubwe piece. So this is the Mapungubwe neck piece. Let's start with that. That's a gold piece. It's just over half a kilo of fine gold. It's hollow and it's percussive, meaning that it makes a noise when you hold it. It rustles, and it can be worn in a couple of different ways. And this is owned by Anglo Gold Ashanti. They commissioned it from me. Let's see. Here's a nice way of wearing it. It's completely flexible. So my thinking was that it would be almost like an extension of the body, as one would have a limb that can move. So you want a neck piece, that especially with that kind of weight, that doesn't offer resistance. When you move. If you have a solid piece, it's can you imagine carrying a half a kilo of gold? But this is wearing a half a kilo of gold is manageable. So I got to exhibit in a few important exhibitions, and work is collected. I have work in the Museum of Art and Design in New York that they commissioned from me.
That looks incredible.
So this is actually how that piece looks from the back. A nice, bold African statement. So
and has this ever been done before?
No. This was actually an extension of the other technique, because let me show you this picture right in the front. So what I did was that this piece was made from also the little Surf Marmite Oma foiled pictures, and then just made this very big necklace, and then I was asked to make it in gold. So this one was bought by a collector in the States from Philadelphia. I showed it at this exhibition called Schmuck, not a funny word, but it's in German. It means jewelry. The Schmuck Sonderschau, which means a special show, and it's a very exclusive show. About 50 people every year get selected. Anyway, right there, and it was bought. So I showed a couple of times then, and my career really continued in South Africa. And then I'll just fast forward a little bit to, I have to say, depending on who the audience is for the video.
Everybody.
I say I always had it in my heart. I always knew that I was going to come back to live in Israel. It never left me. As a religious Jew, I would sit every Shabbat morning, in my cottage in the holy Reuvel, holy Highlands North HaKodesh, and I would just think, I would be imagining myself back in Jerusalem, that I'm here, living here. But there were just things that I had to do first. So the last about 4 or 5 years, I've been doing restorations of, longer, probably the last 10 years, candlesticks and ketters and like large Judaica, which I love doing. It's just, for a person to be able to use their candlesticks again in their house, it's like very, very important for me. And I found ways to fix things that other people don't like to work with, and I found also fabulous people to work with in South Africa who did my silver plating. I didn't do the silver plating. So, for example, I worked a lot with sterling silver, also with a lot of Israeli stuff actually. So that was nice, and please God, I hope I can do that here as well. But then during COVID, I watched this organization, well, it's through Wendy Kirsch actually. She started something called the Lockdown University. And I would watch her show, her presentations, not her, she facilitated it, but she had these most unbelievable speakers every evening, speaking to, could be a couple of thousand people via Zoom. And included in it was Holocaust presentations by a woman named Trudy Gold. And then, I don't know, just somehow it gelled in my mind. I'm not sure if I heard one speaker perhaps mention the gold, the Nazi gold, but somehow the idea started to gel in my mind that I heard about the Nazi gold, so hearing about the Nazi gold, and then I read the book by Tom Bauer about the Swiss collaboration in blood money, the gold that they took from the Nazis and laundered actually, and it actually enabled the Nazis to pay for weapons and raw materials. Anyway, read the book, Tom Bauer. I decided to probe, and then I spoke to Tally Nates, and I just had this long conversation with her. I said, I really, really want to do work on the Nazi dental gold. I think this is a history that needs to be known, and particularly since, for me personally, that I had quite a strong international exposure. I already had it, how they say in Hebrew, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. I already had it in my mind that
a seed was planted.
The seed was planted, but I could see the end result. In the Chadodi we sing that. I could see, I want to create a syllabuses for various jewelry schools around the world.
So I must just mention, Tally Nates is the founder and the curator of the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center.
Yeah, and she somehow has time for everybody. Don't ask. She's amazing. And was so excited by my subject. I had already been reading a little bit on the subject, what it is, what am I talking about. The Nazis not just dehumanized people, specifically Jews, but also commodified their bodies, meaning that they were able to turn a human being's body into something which was utilitarian, that what is it worth in money terms. So first, before, take Auschwitz, take the slave labor, before a Jew, I'm talking specifically about Jews, it also happened for Poles and also happened for other prisoners of war. My concern is Jews for now. So is that they worked as slave laborers. The Nazis were able to do a calculation as to how many calories were required for the person to work X number of months, and then there would be, there's this German word, I don't know what it is, but when they would be used up. And you had companies, like Porsche and, of course, IG Farben, but Krupp and Siemens and who were deployed to their company. So these slave laborers, and they would die and they would be replaceable. We're talking Jews who would work they would work them to death. It wasn't necessarily. It's just debatable whether they were actually worked with the purpose of killing them, but the way that they were treated, they passed away, but they were replaceable. And in that case, either Jews were gassed, for example, on arrival at Auschwitz, in which case there's a level of theft, of spoliation, of theft, of taking Jewish property. But not only did they take, say, the goods that the Jews had arrived with, say, at Auschwitz, their gold jewelry and whatever they had come along with them, or their precious objects, thinking they're going to work in the East. But when the body was gassed, when the Jew was gassed, so the Sonderkommando had the terrible, shocking task of having to go into the chamber and with pliers remove the gold teeth. They had to open every mouth and check for teeth, check for gold teeth, and extract these teeth. So we're talking about, the total commodification of the human being. So to the very last. So this history is very, very important. And I really think that it needs to be known, especially we're in a period of increasing anti-Semitism, and Holocaust denial is on the horizon, as we move from memory into history, as memory, it's still in our 70 years, 80 years post-Holocaust, we have memory, we still have survivors. Les has 1,000, I don't know how many interviews Les has given to survivors, but we're moving into a time where there may be more doubt in the future. So I really wanted to do the work of finding out about the Nazi dental gold. So my question were, how did they process this gold? Where did it go? What was the circuit? What was the circuit from Himmler's instructions from Berlin to extract gold? Who was it given to? Who was the instruction? This is my interest. Who was the instruction given to in Auschwitz or the various other death camps? What was the actual goldsmithing process? So I'm coming from a goldsmith's point of view. What was the goldsmithing process of separating organic matter, from the gold? They took teeth in order to refine. And to what level did they have to finish their process in Auschwitz? So let me show you a picture, because there is a survivor. He's an artist, and his name was David Oller. So he's French. I think he was born in Poland, I'm not sure. But straight after the Holocaust, look what we've got here in the way. Straight after the Holocaust, after the liberation, he had been in Auschwitz, and he did these drawings. So now this is a drawing of the foundry, the gold foundry room. And what it shows you is a Nazi over here with these two guys who are working the gold, and they're pouring the gold and they're making ingots. So this was direct, this is first-hand experience.
So there was a refinery in Auschwitz?
A refinery, a secret room, absolute secret room. No one was allowed to enter there. So a refinery in Auschwitz. So I'm talking refinery, they made ingots, they made the little gold blocks. But now the company, and I had mentioned this to you, Les, the company that received the gold was called Degussa, Deutsche Gold and Silver Refiners. Now they still exist, and they together with, now Degussa is about the gold, IG Farben are the people who produced the Zyklon B gas, which was used for gassing. They both had a share, IG Farben and Degussa, in a company called De Gesch, which was a pesticide company, and they were the ones who produced the Zyklon B. So you've got a company, Degussa, who has this vested interest in the gas, but are also refining the gold. So the gold would be actually sent from Auschwitz, as far as I know, only from Auschwitz now. So I've been reading and working on work done by a historian from Northwestern University. His name is Peter Hayes. And he was commissioned actually by Degussa, the company, as I say, they still exist, to do research into the gold dealings and the gold economics during the Reich period, where Degussa was they were Nazified. They were a Nazi company. They fell within the whole Nazification process. I understand also that they used to sell, in post the war, they actually had a branch in Jerusalem. So
Degussa actually were one of the main amalgamator companies. That when we would make the amalgam, the machine was Degussa, and only
here in Yerushalayim,
all over the world.
All over the world.
And also in Israel.
Yeah, so that's, you just wonder one doesn't know. So clearly my work also overlaps with dentistry, because I now also need to know, how extractions work, and I'm curious about that. But essentially what I'm trying to look for, really, in an ideal world, and if I can find enough resources, primary sources, and is to create a circuit. I want to see a circuit between, ideally, between Himmler all the way through to the gold being processed by the Sonderkommando and taken, then sent to Degussa, who then sends it to... So the gold was actually used for the SS soldiers, the troops, to fix their teeth. Gold was used. Then there was a message from, I wrote it in this paper that I presented, from, I'm not sure the name of the guy, but he was involved in the health side of the care for the SS officers. And he said, we've accumulated 50 kilos of gold. We've got enough now. I think it's time for you to send the gold to the Reich, to the Reichsbank. So the gold started then to be diverted to the Reichsbank. Now, we're not talking all Nazi, we're not all dental gold, but that's part of what my work is going to be, is to see what proportion of dental gold also was actually sent to the Reichsbank, but then from the Reichsbank it was sent to Switzerland. So this is something that needs to be explored. It hasn't really been done. Tons, we're talking tons, because when, let me just see if I finish that subject. So after the war, 45, Eisenhower, the American troops, I'm not sure I can't remember the detail of what put them onto it, but they were put onto something called Merker's Cave. I have a picture of that here. Let's find it here. Yeah. So this is Merker's Cave. It's I think it's near Salzburg. Yeah, Salzburg. So it's like very, very deep underground. And the Nazis had, these are all bags of gold. So they took gold, and there's also silver. I'll show you some other pictures. Can you see that clearly here? So let me just get to the next one. Here are some of the the Americans just looking at what they have found. They have found a hoard, a huge hoard of gold.
And this was hidden?
Stolen.
This was
hidden
secret?
And stolen and hidden, yeah. And here you have boxes of wedding bands. And there's also, one of these boxes has got dental teeth. Dental gold. Yeah. So this was Merker's Cave.
From the teeth that were extracted.
Yeah. So I have, like in Peter Hayes' book, it's called From Complicity. Yeah, Peter Hayes is really the expert on Degussa. So
and he was commissioned by Degussa?
Yeah, he was. And there's some kind of
so in a way it's a type
kapara, some kind of to exonerate themselves. But I've read they're online. They were taken over by a company called Evonik, and I've read the history during the war, during the Holocaust, what they put on there, and they take, there's no culpability, there's nothing, it's a very sanitized post. So let me just put my glasses on. There's a quote. I don't know gory one wants to get here, but there's a quote. I hope I can find it here. Maybe it's not fair to wait.
No. Beverley, if you could maybe even read part of the dissertation that you gave.
Yeah.
I
just thought I'd read a part. Okay. So it's what Peter Hayes he cites. He's a historian. He's a really very high-powered, very highly respected historian. Yeah. So this he quotes. Let me tell you, so Peter Hayes' book is From Cooperation to Complicity, Degussa in the Third Reich. I also used, Gideon Grief is really the expert on the Sonderkommando. He's Israeli and really just a remarkable man who found all these Sonderkommandos who were still alive in the 80s and interviewed them. And he wrote the book We Wept Without Tears. The Sonderkommando are the people who did this extraction and the refinement. They had this terrible job. And then I actually found an article by a French, he calls himself an archaeological dentist. His name is Xavier Huyot. And he wrote an article, History of Nazi Dental Gold from Dead Bodies to Swiss Bank. And that was my first article. And from him, it opened up for me many sources. And for example, the original decree from Himmler to extract the gold it was quoted in his article. So anyway, let me just read this for you. So but on some occasions, deliveries came in a condition that made drawing. This is to the refining area in the refining center of Degussa in Berlin. On some occasions, and I'm quoting Peter Hayes here, deliveries came in a condition that made drawing conclusions hard to avoid as regards whether it was dental gold. According to Erna Spivak, rather understated written account, this is a person who worked at Degussa with the dental gold. It was rumored clandestinely that the jewelry came from Poland, where it had been taken from the Jews and, so to speak, confiscated from them. Gold teeth, which, as one later knew, probably were from concentration camps, also came to the refinery by the crate load. At the time, such suppositions were not expressed. We girls did not think about that anyway. We had other concerns. Okay. In 1998, however, this is what Peter Hayes writes, when she was interviewed for German television, her memories about the dental gold were more vivid and ghastly. The crowns and bridges were those there were those where the teeth were still attached. That was the most depressing. The fact that everything was still there. It was probably just like it had been broken, when broken out of a mouth. The teeth were still there and sometimes still bloody and with pieces of gum on them. So that's not nice and difficult probably to watch and to hear. So what happened is that so I had this amazing conversation with Tali Nates, and she was so encouraging. She said, no, she says, this research has not been done, and she said, it's a very difficult area, and, I've been thinking about it for a long time, so I'm a little bit desensitized already by now. But also, I've gone to Germany 5 times, and like with colleagues, there's not really this conversation that we have. We don't really talk about the Holocaust. And there are German colleagues. And so I don't know, the feeling is that this is information that I would like to put into a syllabus, and as a culmination, if I do the thesis on and do for the masters, the culmination will be a syllabus that I offer to the jewelry schools around the world to know this information. So Tali encouraged me to apply at various places, and I looked also at the Kaplan Center in South Africa, and then I heard about the Václav Nut Center for Holocaust Studies, which is a part of Haifa University. And I did a Zoom with him. It was just, as I said, pashut. Zoom was happening.
Meant to be. It was.
Mamash, it was like that week a Zoom was happening. And I said, I can't believe. I said to Tali, there's a Zoom this week. I can't believe it. So I went on the Zoom and I kept on asking them questions and telling them I'm interested in, it was a group Zoom. And then I had an individual interview. And then I filled out the forms. As I say, I always wanted to come back to live in Israel. My mom had passed away. I have minimal commitment in South Africa. And so they gave me a scholarship. They liked my subject. They accepted me and they gave me a scholarship and a small stipend as well. And so now I moved to Israel 3.5 months ago, living up in Haifa. It wasn't my first choice of a city. I know Jerusalem well, but this is it's an amazing program. We have the best of the very best lecturers. We have David Zilklang from Yad Vashem, who's an expert historian. He's the editor of the Yad Vashem research journal. We've learned this term from him on The Final Solution. We've learned about the Second World War with a German lecturer who finished in Cambridge with his PhD. He's married to an Israeli woman, and he also runs as part of the journal research at Haifa University, a high mumche, as they say, a real expert. And they're giving us all these subjects which are connected with the Holocaust, a subject called Curating the Holocaust, about how the Holocaust is memorializing. We've just had a lecture with Dan Mitchman on the historiography of the Holocaust. People are learning about genocide. You have an opportunity to do an internship, and then it just grows. Like next term, we'll learn about the religious responses in the Holocaust. We'll learn. There is also further work around the art of the Holocaust. I think that's perhaps my strength. It's been a challenge to learn all this history, really a big challenge, but I'm getting there. My brain is getting around it. And so, today I was at Yad Vashem, and I actually had this huge privilege to go and see what I thought were gold ingots, original gold ingots from Auschwitz. So it turns out they were tested. They were sold. They were given rather to Yad Vashem by an American army veteran who had gotten them from somebody German while he was still in Europe, and they were given in 1969 to Yad Vashem, and Yad Vashem had them tested like in about 1985. Let's see, as I said, and they were found to be a very bad alloy of silver and copper. So I would say they should still do some further tests to see if there is any gold in there. So I actually handled them today. I really handled them, and they are huge. Here's a picture. But it turns out they're like 18 inches long. Let's see if there's a picture here. Oh, how come I haven't got a picture? Just look quickly. Gosh, no, I haven't got a picture here. That's somewhere else. So sorry. I'll go. I'm looking at documents at the moment, and testimonials of people who were involved. The Zonda commander who had to extract the gold, and then it's a huge privilege to be. I'll just keep going forward. I mean, ideally, I would like to go and spend some time at Auschwitz, maybe do like an internship there. In my second year, I'll do the thesis and the internship there. I'll request it anyway, and where there are people, there are documents, and I'm really interested in the process. What assets did they use? What protection do they have? Where did they get their implements from? What implements did they use for the extractions, for pouring the gold? Did they use, by us, we used to remove organic matter, hydrofluoric acid. So, what acids did they use?
And Beverley, do we know where the gold, most of it landed up?
I don't think so. You ask me my opinion. I think a lot of it is still sitting in the Swiss banks, and plenty is probably in South America. And you ask yourself, look at the German economy. Really, I think they have a lot of gold as well. I don't know. I'm surmising, and it's perhaps naive to make a comment like that, but. Doesn't altogether make sense that the way that Germany was decimated by the Allies after the war, during the end of the war, that doesn't make sense. That it is such a strong economy today. But then the same was with Japan, I guess. I think I don't know where it is. Don't know. There is, of course, there were. Organizations that try to compensate the Holocaust survivors have to still learn about this, learn the details, but there were various conferences, and a person, I think his name was, it's an American who was involved with a special conference for finding a way to deal with all this gold that they had found. So I don't know.
Can I ask, what did the Americans do when they found this in the cave, where they found all the gold?
So that's the part that I'm not really certain of yet. There is detail around that because they collated it, and they had to have people watching it, making sure people are not going to steal. But it was sent to a central point, and I know the British were involved in making the decisions. They had a very long period of a conference. Around how to distribute and how to place a value on the gold. I don't actually know. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Honestly.
That's really blood money.
It is. Today there are processes. There's something called XRF, X-ray fluorescence, where you can test. It's used to test. It was used for the Mapungubwe gold, just to test if the gold was. From a local mine. So you can test today which mine the gold comes from. So you can test if there's organic matter present. The gold was restamped. The gold was sent out of. I have got a picture of a Nazi hallmark, and it's got and these were cast by de Gusse. So. That's just like one, really one of these really big, like gold bullion. That's a hallmark includes de Gusse and the Nazi hallmark.
And it says Berlin.
Yeah. So and then when they were, what I have read, I have to be careful here, but is that they were re-hallmarked. In other words, the stamp was given. They were melted again. In Switzerland, and then given a Swiss hallmark. How they keep bullion. Like the old Fort Knox, or in South Africa, how it's kept in the blocks. I think that's where the limit of my knowledge is. I have work to do yet.
And Vivi, can I ask, because it is absolutely just fascinating, but not only fascinating, it's just unbelievable. There were other camps like Medanik, where they also had gas chambers and their crematoriums. Was gold taken from the other camps as well?
This I have to investigate. I believe so, yeah. And I know, like from Lodge Ghetto, for example. Today I've seen from Lodge, but I think that's more jewellery and from that kind of gold. I have to ask the question tomorrow. I've only seen information about Auschwitz. Yeah. Whether it was actually done in the other camps, I don't know. Yeah.
And to your knowledge, do you know any other students or any other professors that have actually delved in what you are doing now?
Well, not. I think what is apparent is that the there are some dentists who are looking into the history of the Nazi dentists during, and the way that they worked for, for the Third Reich during the Holocaust. So in fact today I've copied from a German dental journal the dentists who were practicing from 1933 to 45 and what they were required to do. What is interesting is in here I found that apparently already in the 1920s, we're talking early days of Nazification, there was somebody who did, a dentist who did his master's thesis on the validity of extracting gold from corpses before they die for commercial benefit to Germany. So they were already mooting the whole idea that you would tamper with the body before death and remove the gold, and then the logic being that it's going to be wasted in the ground, and in 100 years' time this is written. Somebody actually did their master's thesis at Breslau University. It was, it's written. I wrote about it. So it was already in the psyche, in the thinking of that would be logical. It would be, you can push logic to such a point where you just dehumanize, which is where it already was beginning. So no, but I don't know of anybody, certainly not in jewellery. I just hope there's enough primary material to. I saw today enough primary material to do these studies and finish them. I saw today some gold crowns from, which are from Auschwitz. That's So and lots of other jewelry. I saw today some jewelry that somebody who worked in the clothing section of Canada, as they call it in Auschwitz, the area where all the belongings came and where they kept and accumulated. So he took some jewelry he found and he kept them for years and years and buried them. He buried them in Auschwitz and liberation. In fact, he went on a death march. Prior to his death march, his name is Meyer Hack. He's quite a remarkable man. Just watching his testimony now. He took them with him, and he had them with him. And so, I don't know, I found some parallels between that and the Auschwitz scrolls, because the Auschwitz scrolls were written with the faith that there would be Jews after the Holocaust, and that Jews would find them. Jews would find these scrolls and read what they had to go through and what they had to do. So, the Sonderkommando. And so, I actually was reading something that was written by one of these, from the testimonials from the scrolls, and I kind of felt we are the people they were writing for. They were writing for us. It's our people. We are doing the research. Those people who had this unbelievable faith that there would be Jews after the Holocaust. They were targeting us. Because we are alive, we are here, we read, we can tell, we can make this information public knowledge, and it was a very special moment in reading this, just feeling the privilege of being the receiver of the writing. So similarly, I think with this guy, I think he buried in the faith, this huge faith and the defiance, to defy such huge heroism and the risk of life. And then he kept them all the years with him. They, maybe he thought he will survive and that they will help him in his new life. And he lived in Boston. And a couple of years back, he brought them to Yad Vashem. He said he felt too guilty to be holding on to them. He had them intact. I saw them today. These beautiful pieces of jewelry. But that's another area. So you've got dental gold. You've got gold that was appropriated or stolen from Jews. Their jewelry were obliged to hand in. And then you've also got all the Judaica, the candlesticks, and so metal and silversmithing and jewelry and gold. It's very relevant from the Holocaust, so I just carrying on until I can't carry on anymore.
Really, it's incredible what you are doing.
That's my thinking.
I just want to thank you, but
Yeah.
being an artist, it gives you're in a position that very few people are, because you're coming from your knowledge of working with gold and you've been doing it, and you're so successful at what you've done, and now you're putting your talents to such an important, incredible purpose. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's that ethics of the fathers. My nephew in Ramat Bet Shemesh, Davy Somers, he always says, Lo alai ligmora. I'm not sure exactly how it is. Lo alai ligmora, but I have the obligation to begin. So somebody, let this field of study just begin. Let people become interested in studying the gold. Maybe it will lead to also studying where all the gold train and the lost gold and all that. Maybe the people will do research on that as well. But just for jewelry students in Israel, to know this history.
Or jewelry students all over the world.
All over the world, yeah. Please God, I think it's like I've told a couple of people about it. Some significant historians, like Michael Berenbaum, and I spoke to Ephraim Zuroff about it, and they like really think it's a very important subject. So we carry on.
And you've had tremendous support?
I've just encouragement, really encouragement. People just encouraging me to go forward.
Has there been any negativity from any?
No. I mean, I realize that it's a gory subject, so people are, even at Yad Vashem, there was just some resistance to, not resistance, but just it's such an ugly subject, But okay, they work with it. The resources are there. You've got to use them. That's it. Yeah.
It might be an ugly subject, but it's such an important subject, and it really is. It's a mystery that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
It's a right that needs to be wrong. That wrong that was done, we need to right it. We need to.
I think that there's nothing more material than gold, and so if anyone wants to disprove that the Holocaust happened, you're going to have material proof that the Holocaust happened and that this is what went on, and these were the kind of barbaric actions that were perpetrated, and this is the mindset, but that it happened. The gold can be proof that it happened. In 100 years' time, in 200 years' time, how do we remember? How do you remember a war, the First World War, or Crimean War, or all the Napoleonic Wars? It's just history. It's written in a book, and especially today with all the revisionist stuff, people want to write the Holocaust out of existence. The Poles are doing it. The Lithuanians are doing it. So, I think we need proof. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm just going to come in and thank you, but it's so true. What you're doing is so incredibly important. So,
you've given me some perspective, because, and also from your point of view as a dentist, I'm so glad that you're interested, because I'm going to need to know a little bit,
well, if I can help in any way, and anybody who's watching this video, if anybody has any information, because it is, what you said, it's so true. It's you look at gold, and to think in Germany, what did they do with the gold? And to the thought that maybe the gold from the camps were used by dentists to place into German.
They were.
It's that thought itself. It's horrendous. So
gruesome.
there's things that we have to come to terms with.
Yeah.
And I think the truth it must be told. And what you're doing is just groundbreaking, and it's incredible. And you need strength, because it's a very hard topic, but it's such a vital topic.
Yeah.
And it's so important. It's part of history, part of the truth, part of our people, and it's part of this is what happened, and we need to turn it.
Yeah, like objects can keep history honest, because you can write history. You can write history from the way you want to write history, but objects are proof, and so it keeps it fresh, in other words. Yeah.
But your journey, how you came, it's just been amazing, and you should continue with only success in your holy journey, because it really is. It's a holy journey that you're doing.
Wow.
And you should have all of Hashem's blessings, and
Amen.
you should be successful, and we must all do everything in our power to help you, because I think it's incredible, and it's amazing, and I'm in awe. And I think it's, as a dentist itself, the subject, it doesn't occur to, but very few people think about it, because it's hard to think about.
Yeah.
And having what you do, your beautiful art that you do, and now you actually creating art is becoming reality, and it's you showing the reality and the truth.
Yeah, just having grown up in South Africa, we grew up with a lot of mixed feelings, around things, and just having done the work on Mapungubwe, I just sort of said, okay, do for the Jews. You're interested in gold, so now do the Jewish gold. So it's a part of my motive. And
well, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful to you, and we all are so grateful to you.
Goodness, and I hope, please God, that something really happens, and good.
Beverley, really, there are no words to thank you, because what you're doing it's extraordinary. It really is, and it really is holy work. So you should just have all the success, really.
Thank you so much.